I'm Bae Macfarlane, founder of Mary's Advocates, a nonprofit organization dedicated to strengthening marriage. The church should get off the sidelines whenever one spouse files a no-fault divorce. No-fault divorce furthers the destruction of society. Marriage is God's plan to bring new human beings into the world with immortal souls, and it's the first school of humanity for the children. From a Christian perspective, marriage mirrors Christ's love for humanity, as in Ephesians 5 and in John Paul II's theology of the body. In marriage, you have the complementarity and collaboration of masculine and feminine working together to provide a stable household for the upbringing of children. And marriage and family is also the cell upon which society is built. That's why when someone files a no-fault divorce, they're furthering the destruction of society. No-fault divorce came on the scenes around the same era that the U.S. Supreme Court was legalizing abortion, even though states had laws against it. In 1965, the Uniform Law Commission started having annual meetings on marriage and divorce. They're a group of lawyers and judges whose purpose is to have laws be the same from state to state to state. In the early 70s, they introduced their Uniform Marriage and Divorce Act to all the states' legislatures. Now this had something different, no-fault divorce. No-fault divorce was sold to the public as a way for the court to issue divorce when both people wanted the divorce. Prior to that, somebody had to have done something fault-based to merit the divorce. So if both people wanted the divorce, one of them might literally go to the court and lie and say, wink, I committed adultery. So they have grounds for the divorce, and that person's going to take the hit financially or regarding access to the children. But what no-fault divorce has become is a way for one spouse to force on the other spouse a divorce they don't want, and in the moral universe, they don't deserve it, and the children don't want it either. Now, I found that it's not well known that a fit, reliable parent can have their children taken away just because they're a defendant in a no-fault divorce, but it is well documented. Stephen Baskerville, who's a professor at Patrick Henry College, wrote Taken into Custody, The War Against Fathers, Marriage, and Children. He's got 47 pages of footnotes where he's documenting all the other sources that are explaining what's really going on with no-fault divorce, and it is a grave injustice. Usually, it's the moms who file no-fault divorce against the dads. Sometimes the dads will also file a no-fault divorce. They might simply want to get out of their marriage obligations, and the civil courts do not recognize a husband's permanent, full obligations to support his wife and children in one home. So that mom is really in a bad way. Those of us who recognize that no-fault divorce is a grave injustice want the church to do more. When Catholics marry, we don't make up our own wedding vows. We marry in accord with the Catholic rite of marriage. And every time there's a wedding, the priest asks 3 questions. Have you come here freely and without reservation to give yourselves to each other in marriage? Will you love and honor each other as man and wife for the rest of your lives? Will you accept children lovingly from God and bring them up according to the law of Christ and His church? The couple knows these questions are coming. They have to say yes if they want to get married that day. Further, when they actually exchange their vows, for example, they say, I take you to be my husband. I promise to be true to you in good times and bad, in sickness and in health. I will love and honor you all the days of my lives. Catholics agree to uphold the Catholic understanding of marriage, and the obligations essentially are they love each other permanently till one dies as husband and wife. They are open to children, and they agree that they're going to be sexually faithful. They also agree that they're going to raise their children in accordance with the law of Christ and His church. Now, the Catholic Church has doctrine, and we have canon law. This is my Code of Canon Law annotated. It's got the original canon law in Latin and then the English translation. The annotations were originally in Spanish. It's from the University of Navarre. They're translated into English. And this source is recommended by the President of the Pontifical Council of Legislative Texts. Canon law, section 1151 to 55, talks about separation of spouses. And in Canon 1151, it says that spouses are obligated to maintain a common conjugal life unless a lawful reason excuses them. In other words, they have to live together unless there's a lawful reason to separate. And those are 3. One is if I was to commit adultery. If I'm a repetitive, unrepentant adulterer, my husband would have a reason to be separated from me. Or if my husband was a grave abuser such that he's dangerous, and the only way that the children and I can be safe is to be separated from him, then I would have a morally legitimate reason to be separated. The third reason to be separated would be if either of us are making it impossible for the other or the children to practice our faith. This is only talking about separation of spouses. There's another section of Canon Law, 1692, that deals with procedure for divorce. People with a Catholic marriage cannot even file for divorce unless they have permission from the bishop. And they cannot seek a civil divorce order that's contrary to divine law. Now, that's a double negative. In other words, if you have a Catholic marriage, you can't even file for divorce unless you have permission from your bishop and unless you're only seeking a divorce order that's in accord with divine law. The challenge is that these canon laws are kind of being ignored locally. Canon law has its roots in Scripture and tradition. And Scripture teaches us in Matthew 18 what we're supposed to do when our brother sins against us. If I'm sinning against you, you're instructed to come to me alone first and talk to me. And if I can understand what I'm doing to you is wrong and I stop, that's a good thing because we've restored our relationship. But if I refuse to listen to you, then you're supposed to bring witnesses. And if I refuse to listen to them, you're supposed to bring the situation to the attention of the church. And if I still refuse even to listen to the church, I'm supposed to be treated like a tax collector and a Gentile. Consider this example. You have a wife who's very unhappy in her marriage. She's so unhappy, she's starting to despair and she's giving up hope. She refuses to cooperate with people who have experience helping couples. She won't work with Retrovi or Dr. Richard Fitzgibbons or Alexander House. Instead, she is going to force a no-fault divorce on her husband. Now, from the husband's perspective, he's facing with losing day-to-day access to his children. The family's finances are going to be totally destroyed. The civil courts will cut in half the property and assets. They do not care if the husband has done nothing wrong, meriting a divorce. And the children are going to lose access to the parents. Where there used to be two parents together in one house with either mom or dad are home, now the children are always in a single-parent household. They always lose. Now, in this scenario, the husband would go to his wife and plead with her, stop forcing the divorce, don't file divorce, work with me, we can get help. And if the wife refuses to listen to him and won't listen to witnesses, according to Matthew 18, he is to bring the situation to the attention of the church. Well, now he has a formal way to do this. From the husband's perspective, his wife is doing something wrong, and he now has a formal way where he can ask the church to intervene. He can bring the situation to the attention of the church with Mary's Advocate's Vindicate Rights petition, which he can download from our website. Now, the hope would be that if his wife is formally, officially advised by the church that she can't force a no-fault divorce on her husband while calling herself a Catholic in good standing, she might choose to stop the divorce and reconcile with her husband and work with those who have experience helping couples. Now, the Vindicate Rights petition is a document that he literally just downloads from the website. And the keynote of it is a 3-page libellus, which is a petition that he's going to give to his diocesan tribunal. And what he is asking for in that libellus, in canon law language, I'm going to read. Petitioner asks the tribunal to initiate a formal contentious process in order to pursue and vindicate petitioner's rights. The undersigned petitioner begs the tribunal to 1. Take necessary action to coerce his wife to resume cohabitation. 2. Pursue a penal trial if she persists in manifest grave sin associated with abandonment. 3. Take necessary action to coerce family and friends to cease and desist all support and encouragement being given to her to continue the separation or pursue a divorce. This language was written by canon lawyer Philip Gray when the 1983 Code of Canon Law came out. It was a reorganization of the earlier code. It wasn't exactly all new code. It had a section, 1095, on granting annulments for psychic reasons, psychological issues. And about 20 years after that canon law was issued, the Vatican, through its Pontifical Council of Legislative Text, issued an instruction, Dignitas Connubii, which is the instruction that tribunals are to follow when they handle causes for nullity of marriage. In 2005, when this instruction came out, the dean of the Roman Rota had a few things to say about annulments granted for these psychic reasons. Now, the Roman Rota is the highest court of appeal. Well, it's actually the second highest court of appeal in the Catholic tribunal system. And the dean of the Roman Rota is saying that tribunals are applying the canon law on psychic grounds for annulment too laxly. Specifically what he says, one encounters the laxness in the application of the law. This is found in the accustomed reasoning of ecclesiastical sentences, which not unfrequently identify a minimal preparation for sacramental marriage, insufficient human maturity understood in a general way, or imprudence in behavior, with a lack of necessary discretion of judgment, or the desired fitness for the essential obligations of marriage. Now, this is canon law speak, but what's important about what he said is that tribunal sentences, that is their decisions, are using simple immaturity or poor marriage preparation or just imprudence as grounds for annulment, basing it on these psychic grounds for annulment. And that's not correct. That's too lax. Now, the reason I bring up annulment at all is because the Vindicate Rights petition can also be used as a counterclaim for an annulment. So in the situation I've been using as an example, the wife will go to the tribunal and say, our marriage is not valid, and she's looking for a decree of invalidity. But the husband is going and saying, our marriage is of course valid, and I am asking you, church, to do like it says in Matthew 18, and to vindicate my rights and our children's rights to have an intact home. The Vindicate Rights petition includes another portion, which is a letter to the diocesan bishop, asking the bishop to get involved and inform this abandoning wife that she can't receive communion. Now, this is based on Canon 915, and it's based on the principle that anyone who says they're a Catholic in good standing can only be receiving communion if their outward acts are consistent with church teaching. Now, of course, everybody sins, but Christ says you're supposed to be married for life, so abandoning your marriage is a very serious problem. Canon 915 first was getting widely publicized back in 2003, and in December of 2003, the now Cardinal Raymond Burke, who's the prefect of the Supreme Tribunal of the Signatura, he was bishop at that time of La Crosse, Wisconsin, and he was saying that pro-abortion politicians who call themselves Catholics in good standing should be denied communion. And that's based on the fact that they're obstinately persevering in grave manifest sin. After the pro-abortion politicians were instructed that they can't receive communion and call themselves a good Catholic and be pro-abortion, if they basically, snub their nose up at the church and say, I don't really care what the authoritative church says, they shall be denied communion. And this applies to an abandoning wife, because if she's instructed by the church that you can't abandon your spouse and force a no-fault divorce and call yourself a Catholic in good standing, if she does that and she continues to push the divorce, she is obstinately persevering in grave manifest sin. Forcing a no-fault divorce, as I said earlier, is the furthering of the destruction of the society. And the Catechism teaches divorce is immoral. It's a grave offense against nature. It's a plague. It causes scandal. It hurts the spouse and it hurts the children. This is very different than saying that wife has a morally legitimate reason to separate. If she's forcing a no-fault divorce, she's doing something really bad. And we're trying to encourage her to stop. That is, the church get off the sidelines and encourage her to stop. Now, the whole reason that Mary's Advocates is bringing the Vindicate Rights petition to the public is because we are confident that there are a number of people who call themselves faithful Catholics who care about being loyal to the church, who are despairing in their marriage, and they're forcing a no-fault divorce on their family. And if they were authoritatively advised by the church that you can't do that and call yourself a Catholic in good standing, some number of them will change their mind. They will choose to work on reconciling. And then the children, instead of being in two separate houses, will have one household together with mom and dad. They'll have some place to go to for first communions. The parents will both be there at weddings. They'll be there when the grandchildren are born. And that's the good thing.